problems.
There are surely some great ideas that needed in the product. Go ahead, Dan. You're saying something.
I was just going to say, the company I work for now has a lot of Great Plains customers, and in the whole mindset in Great Plains, you didn't do much customization, but
Right.
there's like a million add-ons. There's like all these little add-ons for like even like stuff for zip codes, things like that. So people are used to being able to have an add-on, or kind of a snap-in feature, for lack of a better description, right? That fill all these
Right.
little gaps versus doing a small customization, and that's kind of like a different mindset.
Yeah, in Nav we have already done it, and I guess that's where our ideas are different. That why to bug Microsoft for each and every small thing, because that was not possible in the past. Maybe that's the reason we think from that direction.
Right, right. But you're right. The Great Plains customer or partners don't understand Business Central, and they're basically just selling those migrations on. You need to move to a new platform,
Right.
because Great Plains is
Funny
going to
enough,
eventually be discontinued.
I'm doing one of them at present, and believe me, the requests are crazy. So
Yeah.
sometimes they feel overwhelmed by the features of Business Central. Sometimes they try to bring in their GP features into this. I wanted
And eventually, I guess
we have yeah. Good.
eventually I guess that's the idea from Microsoft, that whatever is available great in different products, let's bring them in into the Business Central, or for a better word, in the Dynamics world, right? So
Yes.
that, like, when you read about the deprecation policies from Microsoft about the code deprecation and all, you'll see that there is a title which talks about that the feature has been moved, which means it was a great feature, let's say in India release, and Microsoft thought that it's a need for rest of the world, so they pulled it from the India version and put it into the W1, so that now it's part of every release. So
Yeah.
they are
North
selecting
American
these
deposit.
great, yeah, North American deposit, North American comments on, not comments, yes, those booleans on report printing, print on invoice and print on that, that was never available in any other part of the world, and they brought it into the to every release now, where you can choose these booleans about comments, yeah, where you want to print these comments on the sales order, sales code, sales invoice. And in India, back when I was working for Indian partner, it was a custom that we used to do. And I was super surprised that, oh, it's a feature in Nav for North America. So now they brought that back into the for everyone. And as you gave example of deposit. So the way I think what they are doing is all the product that they have in the same line, like GP and Solomon and others, whatever great features are there, they're also trying to pull those out and put it into Business Central as one of the offering from Microsoft. It seems good, at to a certain extent, I guess.
I've heard some 2 weeks ago, Microsoft is basically looking to acquire a few GP companies, partners basically, who have built very good add-ons.
Maybe, yeah, that's possible. You know, that always happen, I guess. But who asked
What
for
would
it?
they do with those? Put them in Nav
Wow.
or BC?
Sorry?
I was just curious what they would do if Microsoft bought those partners with intellectual property. What would be their intention to move
The
that into
intention is to
Business
bring those
Central?
features. Yeah,
To
Business
Business
Central, yes.
Central. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
Most of the
eventually
customers
that's
from
the
GP
thing.
are migrating to Business Central. Bigger
Right.
one are moving
That's
to FNO,
Yeah,
but
that's the
majority is
default
still Business
transition.
Central.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, F&O is
And
way too big for most of them.
Yeah.
should we start?
Uh,
We are
yeah, I
anyway
guess.
very few people.
Yeah, we were waiting for someone who requested it, but I guess he's not here. But let's talk about it. And if you think we know about it, we can drop and talk about something else, if that makes sense. But this was requested last week about understanding how the resource exposure policy in an app works. And, let's try it out, different combination that are there, and see how it works, especially in a scenario where you are using an ISV app and then you are building PDEs on that. So what an ISV should be doing when they are building apps so that it doesn't become a problem for PTEs in certain areas, and what are different ways to limit partners, if yeah, for lack of a better word, so that their secret code kind of remains behind the scene, but the partner can still access most of the app. So if you're watching the recording later on YouTube, there's a page that you go to register for the next meeting, and this page normally gets updated India Sunday time, more or less. And then if you're here in the meeting, then you can drop your name and email. And that's how it worked. Okay, so what changed, as in why and when this was changed? So in Business Center 2021, before 2021 release wave 2, there was one simple property which was show my code. If you set show my code to true, it will allow partners or any other customer who have your app to actually download your app, more or less. They can just go into the extension management and click on like this. They select this app and then they say download source, if that property is enabled, more or less, which was kind of limiting because it was just a on off switch. And if you are an ISV, you would prefer that partners should not be able to download your source code, because there are surely certain areas in your code which you have spent good amount of time and energy on it, so you wanted not to show the code, but then there was other problems that were happening during debugging and other scenarios that partner goes through. So in 2021 release wave 2, Microsoft announced that there's a replacement of show my code, which is now is by default available on each app that you build, and that property is changed to resource exposure policy. Now it gives multiple options rather than one single switch of yes or no in show my code. And if you are a PTE developer or a app developer, you need to make sure that all your apps are updated with this, because show my code is going to be deprecated in future. I don't know how that will react to the apps which are already published on an environment when that's get deprecated. Will that be a error when that property is removed or not? But as a best practice, what I would suggest that if you're building PTEs for your customer, just to follow the deprecation policy, change that show my code to resource exposure policies, and that is only applicable to extensions that you have built before this release. After this release, your app.json, let me open my VS Code, automatically adds this rather than show my code. So you don't have to worry about those extensions. But if they are the previous one, then you should be keeping an eye on them when you are adding features into it, and make sure you change it to resource exposure policy. Now, resource exposure policy gives you a flexibility in three different areas of how you want to limit your code. The first one is, do you, do you want to allow debugging from partners? Do you want people to debug a process which may get into your code, and do you want them to debug it or not? So you can now define that yes, I would like them to debug, but maybe not do other things. So there is a different flag now available in the resource exposure policies that tells you that you can set as a app developer that I would allow any other extension who is dependent on my extension to debug my source code if required. There is a non-debuggable attribute that we'll talk about in the demo when we do this after this slide deck, which is super important for partners who are building apps, because that gives you more flexibility than just this boolean on your app.json. The second part of your resource exposure policies is about allow download source code, which means that somebody can go to extension management and click on that button and download the source code. Would you like to enable this or not? That's you can define based on true and false on this particular part of resource exposure policy. And then the last but not least is about include source in symbol file, which means when you download symbol, like whenever you take a dependency, you download these symbols. Would you allow people to see the source code of your objects in the symbol file or not? So when people will take dependency on your app, they surely will get a dependent app here. But will you allow them, like to give you an example, like if you go to the system app, or maybe where is that OAuth app? I forgot. System, I guess.
System application.
System application, yeah. So there are certain areas in this app also which you cannot access as defined by Microsoft, and for sure, where you will not be able to double click and go to the source code. But then you can, if it is a table, then you can always see the schema of the table, if that makes sense. Like this, you can see the fields and all, but you can't see the code. So that kind of talks about this property, that do you would like to include the source in the symbol file or not. It doesn't limit you with perspective of IntelliSense or extending a table in that extension. That all will be allowed either ways. But these three properties, which are part of the resource exposure policy, let you control the behavior of your app when people take dependency on your app. So let's, for the demo, let's do this. Okay, close this. What I've done is I've created but created a workspace where there are two apps. One, assume the app is an ISV app that I'm building, where I can define different properties. So if I come down here, this is the section that we are talking about today. By default, these all three are set to true at this moment. But I heard, or maybe that's already changed, but initially some of them were false, and then Microsoft defaulted all of them to true by default. You can surely change them. But when you create a PTE or any other extension per se, the default values for all these property would be true. That means you're allowing debugging, you're allowing downloading the source code, and you're allowing the include source in the symbol file. So now let's take a simple example that I don't want people to download the source code that I have. We'll just change it to false. Simple. And let's add a code unit into it. That makes sense. Okay. This is my app code unit. Okay, let's say. Okay. That makes my code unit here, and let's create a procedure here. Okay. Take it up, and then okay, let's call this app functions. Now, assuming this is my app, and let's assume that there is some code here. At this point, if I generate this app, which I'll do with the Control-Shift-B, app will get generated, which is this app. And when I click on this app, I should be able to see what objects are there, and I should be able to see what code is there, because in my app.json, I said, yes, include my source code in the symbol file, and also debugging allowed, but I'm just trying to not allow the source code download. So now let's go and let me see where that is, and let's try to publish this app in one of our environment that I have, and see how this property works. Okay. And I don't know, you guys notice or not, while this is installing, the previews are out for the next version. So maybe that is something that we should start looking at going forward. But yesterday, sometime during our day, I guess, Microsoft did announce the previews for Business Central 21, and they are out. You can either create Dockers for it, or if you have a SaaS environment, you can surely create a preview on your SaaS environments as that happens. Okay, let's wait for this to get published. The only rule where these property does not work is when you publish them directly from your VS Code, which I don't think will be a scenario, at least with the ISV apps. But these properties kind of doesn't work if you are not publishing it the way we did it, and you just click F5 from your VS Code and publish them. That's where these properties kind of more or less fail. So let's see what's happening here. It's still installing. Yes, it's still okay. Okay, so while this is happening, let's give it some time, but let's go back to the VS Code. Now, at the same time, let's see what I can do in my PT. So for doing anything on my PT, I'll have to go to this app and get some details on it, which is ID, name, publisher, and version is 1. And we'll have to take a dependency on my this app, which is defined here, so that my this another app understand about this app which is an ISV app at this moment. Okay. Okay. Missed the version. Okay. So based on this, now my pertinent extension understand that I'm trying to either uh, utilize some of the feature of this app or app source app or ISV app, or maybe for a customer request, I need to modify the behavior of the the ISV app that I have. So you define it with 4 parameters in the dependency section of the app on which you want to take dependencies. And you will not always have access to the apps as an app.json. So the way you deal with it is, I love PowerShell for it. So let me open PowerShell. So normally from an ISV, and this only happens on-prem, if you will get a you'll get an app file more or less, which you can deploy on your customer environment. But if you have to modify the behavior that it is working on, what you'll have to do, and let's do that, to get all these details to specify the dependencies. Okay. In your PowerShell, when you import the module for Business Central, you have a command which is get-nav app info, which people feel that it gives you information about all the apps that are published on one particular environment. But there is one another use of this command, which is that I don't need to get info about my apps which are published on any of my environment. I actually want to get the info about an app which is available on this particular path, which is this path. So I can just go there, paste this, and as soon as I press enter, it'll give me all the detail that I'll need to specify the dependency of this app on my pertinent extension. So it gives me the ID parameter, the name parameter, the version, and publisher. And these 4 are what I need to take a dependency on one of my PTE that I'm building. And you can do it for any apps. It's just for the demo that I'm utilizing my app, which we built. But if you have an app from any ISV vendor, you can just use this command called get nav app info, and then the path as the parameter, and just specify the path where that app is, and all the details about that app will be available here. If there are some dependencies to this app, they will also be listed in this area, and we'll see it when we build our next app. So based on that PowerShell command, you'll get all these four values, which you can then define in your PDE, and PDE will take a dependency on that particular app. Now in this, let's assume we would like to utilize that code unit, which is there. So let's create a code unit here also, and let's do a it at 60,000 because they are part of the same workspace. The system is suggesting 50,001, but let's say this is PDE. Now, irrespective of whatever those parameters are, you can always create a variable of ISV app code unit of type code unit, and then you can remove refer the app code units which are there. Now, just because I'm doing it on the same workspace, my app and PDE on the same workspace, I didn't need it to download the symbol for this app. But in a real world where you'll be working with ISV apps, as soon as you specify the dependencies here, you'll have to do a download symbol, which let's do this. And you'll see that the app dependency will come here if it is published on your environment. And once it is available, then you can surely create variables around it. And then, as a normal function call, if you have to call a method here, you can surely call as we app code unit and then whatever the functions are available there. And this doesn't change based on whatever the resource exposure policy we have called. This is the normal calls and all. But now think about the situation where this code unit, this SDS code unit in this app that I have here is super critical for me as an ISV. All my secret sauce is in here, and I don't want anyone to use this outside my app. Does that make sense? That this app, nobody should touch. Nobody should even take reference of any of these functions that I'm defining in this code unit. So while building a pertinent extension, if you reach to a point where you reach to a code unit which you just want to access from your app, there are simple ways to do it, which is you can define a property on your code unit called access, and not just code unit, any object, I guess, internal. As soon as you define this property, any depending app that are there, and if you see here, there is a problem at this point, will not be able to refer any of the function of that particular code unit because it will say that this app or this code unit or this object per se is inaccessible due to the protection label. So in your extension that you're building, and this is not for PDEs, I'll keep on repeating this because sometimes people watch these sessions and then go back and change all their code units to access internal. This is not for PTEs, the customization that you're doing for your customers. You should not try to do it there. Only if you're building an app for app source or as an ISV more or less, and you have some secret sauce here, which you don't want anybody to touch for whatever reason, you can just set this property and that will limit any dependent app to call the methods which are available there. So far, so good. Yeah. His app, let's see what happens. Oh, my download source is enabled.
It will give an error.
Okay.
It will give
Sorry?
an error. It will give
It
an
will
error.
give an okay. Let's do that. Download source. The effective policy for this package do not allow you to download the source code.
This
And
thing terrified me.
yeah. I was also worried that did I set it correctly or not because I didn't knew that you normally don't change this on a PDE, and 99% of my time I work on PDEs. So I didn't knew as in with the show my code, it disables this button. It's good to know that you can still click on it and it'll tell you that you can't do this. And this happened, guys, people who joined late, just by setting this resource exposure policy allowed downloading source as false. Sandeep sir, go ahead. You have something to say?
Leave it. I will ask later.
Remember, and I'll keep repeating this even if it doesn't make any sense, don't do it on PTEs. And I'll tell you why. Because PTEs are something that customer is paying for. So the source code is owned by customer, not by a developer who's working on it. You're being paid to do that. So technically speaking, the customer should have their own source control where they should invite developers, if that's possible, to do the source code for their extensions and all. But
Is it correct? Sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead. I would love to
It-
discuss about it. Yeah.
It depends upon what's the agreement between customer and the developer.
I'm talking about the partner more or less as an employer, right?
Yes,
I
I'm
don't know
talking about
what's in.
developer means partner.
Okay. As
So
in,
if my
are
customer
there
is
any
willing to pay,
situations?
yes, there are. So since I'm partner and we do work, some of the customers within the contract we write that they will own the IP of the product and then we give them the source code. That is their property. But otherwise, in most of the contracts, it's written they have got unlimited usage rights, but they don't own the IP. The problem with giving the IP to the customer is I can't reuse it anywhere else
True.
legally.
But I guess how in my mind, and I would love this discussion to go forward, how in my mind I treat PTEs as different is, for me, PTEs are a customization that a customer requests. Let's add a field on my sales header. Let's add this code on my customer ledger entry so that whenever this posting happens, this also flows to customer ledger entry. And maybe I'm taking the word literally, but IP for me is equivalent to an app on app source. Will that be a fair differentiation? Sandeep sir?
No, PT, the thing is we have to differentiate between what you are getting contracted for and the source code. So source
Okay,
code, see, customer gives you the contract so that certain functionalities will work on his application. That may or may not include source code with it.
okay. As in, then maybe or maybe that's how it's. Maybe it's different in US per se or North America where I'm working. We make sure that the source code is with customer if they need it, because they have paid for it. And yes, if we are building something where it seems to be reusable, then that goes to the product team in the organization where I am in, so that it can be make available in the app store sometime in future.
Sandeep, sir, I mean, sort of.
Yeah,
Sorry to
but
interrupt. Yeah, I have a
no,
question
no.
too. Sandeep sir mentioned that the IP belongs to the partner, right? So let's say if a customer orders something, I mean, kind of a module, right? Kind of IP which a partners develop, and later that after this IP has been installed, that he requires a few modifications in that IP. So will customer
Mhm.
be liable for his particular piece of code or a whole IP?
See, there is no question of liability over here. The
I
liable
mean,
means what?
I guess it's about the ownership
is
at this
customer
point.
is owning, yeah, ownership basically. Customer owns that IP piece or not? I mean, like, let's say you have
Depends.
uh, kind of a, let's say 10 tables you have developed for a IP, and
Mhm.
that's fixed, but customer in that IP requires 5 other more tables to be incorporated in that part. So that total of 15 table with that customer, but your IP contains only 10 table, which is been deployed to all other customers as well. So for the 15 tables or a whole IP piece, is customer requires to have that piece of code or not?
See, it depends upon the contract. If the customer at the time of giving me the order has specifically mentioned who will own the IP, then the IP belongs to them. If there is no specific agreement, then the IP belongs to the partner. If the partner has very, very specifically written that the customer has only right to use, then obviously the IP belongs to the
Yeah,
partner.
I guess there
Uh,
will always be a little bit amount of discussion on this part, because the way I feel about it is from the NAB word, more or less, right? If I'm writing a customization for my customer, either I like it or not, he have the access to the code in the NAV world, because objects are deployed in his environment, right? Just because now it's an app model, uh, it's a little bit different, but that's how I guess I framed my answer, or that's how I understood from that perspective.
can I share my screen?
Yeah, please, if that helps the discussion, why not?
Yeah, I'm just trying to show you what we do normally.
Okay.
I've just copied a big statements. I'm trying to increase the font so that everybody can read it. I will share my screen now.
Yeah, please.
So we, in most of our contracts, we do include this kind of a line: ownership of derivative products. Any product or services that the client develops using our services will be termed as derivative product or services. The solution comprises of large number of reusable components, and IP belongs to the company. Client have all the rights to use such components and derivative products for purposes other than selling, leasing, licensing them to third parties. See, we don't want to end up in place where we develop something and the customer starts selling it, leasing it to
Makes
third
sense.
parties.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess I have never seen this, so maybe that's new for me, and I guess that's the reason why I was
Makes
talking.
sense to me as well.
But yeah, if this is on legal document, that I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
So
So yeah, I guess that's how different companies operate globally.
I ask you one more question. This is regarding
Yeah,
the policies that the resource exposure policy that we were setting up. So
right.
if can I define a table as internal?
Yes, you can. Let's do
So
that.
that
Let's create a table. As in, that means you
the idea
cannot.
is, let me
Yeah.
explain you the idea. Can then I create a page around it on
In
that
your
table?
in your extension,
No, the partner
I
or
doubt.
the customer.
Let's test it, because that would be an I never tested it, but let's have a look on it. Let's say just this primary key over there, and then okay, that's okay. You need a permission set. I'll do that in a while. For content and content, okay. And then access is internal. Okay, and then let's do a permission set on this extension, because it's a table. It will need it. Permission set. Add permissions. And let's include this. Finish. Okay, save. Okay, not a problem. So this is done. Let me refresh the symbols on my PDE app. Just going here and do download symbols. Okay. Why it's not working? Okay. Let me see. Does it show table? No. Let me delete this. Okay. And just because I'm on the same workspace, will not be doing this in an actual environment. But let's copy this app and put it inside this folder of my BC Open Discussion PDE. I can't do that. Why? Copy.
Copy folder to folder.
Let's come here. Okay, otherwise, copy this PDE. Oh, I was able to do that. Let's do this. Okay. Okay. So now this is here, and I have a dependency, and I can. Oh, I don't see tables, but I see code in it, because that X is an internal set, so I can't even do that. Let's try that. Okay. T page, a list type of page. let's say 60,000 on table. What is the table name? The table name is my table. Okay, let's do my table. No, I don't even see that.
This is satisfying.
Okay, now if you change this, so whatever you wanted to, whatever the problems I guess you were trying to deal with, that will be solved. Let's come back here. I've changed the XS and I'm going back and updating my symbols in my PDE. Done now. Let's go back to this and try to use my table. So access limits it within the app. You can't go out and utilize it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Coming back to that, we have seen one property out of three. Let's do something else. Okay. I'll have to change the version of the app because I'm going to deploy it on there. So let's say 1.0.01. And then I am going to go here on the code units. And if you look at it, I just created some fake functions like test my function, or let's do it as test my customer. Because the access is public, anyone can take reference on these functions. But now when you think about making your app as non-debuggable, that means people cannot debug a scenario in their PTEs when they are taking a dependency on your app. Please think about it because it makes partners' life so tough if you just decide the whole app is non-debuggable. Yes, we cannot do changes on your app as partners on ISV apps, but at least we can help you when we see a problem happening on a customer environment if you are allowed to debug. So it's highly requested not to disable this flag because that limits it in a very drastic way when you're doing, trying to identify the cause of the problem. For whatever reason, if you want to limit the debugging, then identify the methods which you don't want to partners to debug. Like in this case, let's assume out of these three, I don't want any dependent extension to debug this function because there is some secret code inside this and I don't want them to debug it. That's where your property of non-debuggable come into the picture. At this point, it PDE, which is taking dependency on this app, can debug the rest of the code unit, but not just this function. So it's a humble request. If you are an app developer or if you're building app for app source or even for on-prem, identify your methods which you don't want to be debugged. And I understand that it makes sense that even if we debug as partners, we'll not be able to modify the behavior. But think about all the different scenarios. Maybe we would like to understand how the flow of the process is modifying or updating the data into different tables that you might have, or utilizing the base Microsoft table. We'll need to read the code. So at least allow us to debug so that we can see that. And the other example is that we can help you better by showing you the exact area where it is breaking because we can debug this. And in consideration that yes, there will be some secret sauces in your code which you don't want to share. Just make those methods as non-debuggable and rest of the methods at least keep them open. So now let's understand what happens when we do this. So let's come here. Sorry, not this. On my app.json, I think I have updated the version. Yes. Okay, and let's build this app. So this is done. And now let's go back to SaaS environment and let's do a publish of this. Okay. 1.01, an updated version. And that gets deployed here. In the meantime, while it is being deployed, let's add some action so that we call these different methods in a sequence so that we can test this out.
A small clarification.
Yes, sir.
Internal will also not allow debugging, right?
Internal will not allow the whole code unit debugging. Object per se, right? So
Non-debuggable is only for the procedures.
yeah, non-debuggable is for the procedure as well as for the variables. You can also
Triggers.
define it at a variable level.
And
I don't
triggers,
know. Triggers in page.
table triggers, field validate.
Let's see. I haven't tested that out, but let's see. Trigger. On validate. Okay, can I make this non-debuggable? No, I cannot on table triggers. Table triggers. Let me use. Yeah, you can't. Not on table triggers. It's only on the variables and the procedures that you have. All right. While this is happening, let's add some pieces into our dependent app, which is here, and let's do a page extension. Let's do it on customer page, if that makes sense. Extension. And let's do it on customer card. Okay. Let's just go into the actions area and to add a add last in one of the group. Let's say customers, and then let's do a action. Okay, and this is test debugging. Application is all. What else you need? Okay, you need tooltip. Yes, tooltip, and then you need image. Okay, let's say test. Okay. Okay. Let's do anything. Okay. In this, let's create a variable of my parent app. So let's do a parent app, if that makes sense, of code unit app. What was that? SDH app. Okay, that's the code unit. Now here, what we want to do is we want to call the parent app dot. Let's do all the functions. Parent app dot test my customer and parent app dot test my vendors. And what we would like to do is we would like to debug this scenario for whatever reasons at this point. Now, let's see, did that got published or not? So we have version 1 installed, which is good. Now, just for the clarity that everybody knows about it or not, what is the reference or common understanding of this parameter version? What it means if I say version 1.0.0.0 here, whereas in my SaaS environment or on-premise environment, the version actually installed is 1.0.0.1.
If 0 is available, then it will not create any problem. Now it should.
Okay. Anyone
I guess
else?
Normally,
this will take the references of old app which you have built earlier for this release.
Okay, but it's not available on my environment. My environment has 1.0.0.1.
That's
no
okay,
reference
but that's okay. This will work, but it will not take the changes in the from 1.0.0.0 to the changes which you have made in 1.0.0.1. The changes will not be there in this app, but it will work continuously with the same version as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Now think about what is this? The application and platform.
there's a
Wherever,
Business Central application and platform
right,
version numbers.
wherever you specify a version, read this. It says the minimum version of the dependent package in this format. It's a minimum version. Sorry, if it finds a lower version than this, it will fail. If it finds a higher version than this or exact version, it'll work. And the explanation of it is also here. If you define this to version 14, it doesn't matter. And that's the reason that the apps that you have published in some of your environment, which we built, let's say 4 years ago, and didn't had any code which got deprecated, are still working as it is. Because these property look for the minimum version that you assign here. So if I do 14 and if I connect it to a Docker of BC20, it will download BC20 because it's higher than 14. But if I do 19 and I try to connect it to 18, it will not download the symbol. In the same way, it works for the dependencies. That the system, while trying to publish this app, will look for this app which is either equal to this version or higher to this version. If higher exists, it will download the symbol of the higher one. If the same exists, it will download the same one. If the lower exists, it will error out.
What's the priority? What's the sequence?
The go ahead.
If it is a 0 is mentioned here and 0 exists, but there is 1 and 2 also. So will it download 2 or 0?
It will download whatever is installed, which will be 2 in any case, right?
Fine. Installed
Whenever
will get priority and then
yes.
Fine.
Right now, before this, there were 2, right? One was 1.0.0, which was not installed, and 1.0.01, which was installed. So we'll take the priority of whatever is installed rather than anything which is not installed. So, I hear these kind of questions in my team also. So I just wanted to clarify that. It may help.
But if you try to install this extension, this will install?
Yes, it will. And I'll do it in front of you right now.
Yeah.
We do the build of it. It's here. Let's go to this path and pick my. Let me remove this.
But in that case, like if there are some changes which are made in 1.0.0.1 and you want to incorporate that changes in this particular extension, in that case you have to change the dependency, right?
No.
So
you can simply download.
yeah.
Only I mean the symbol needs to be re-downloaded, right?
While you're developing, if you have a higher, let's say if you are working with an app which was built by Sandeep Sir's company, right? And they gave you an app of version 2.0.0.0. Okay, you start you set those versions here as a dependency and you started working on it. While you were working on it, you found some issues. You went back to Sandeep Sir and said, oh, we have some problems. They said, okay, here is a new app, 0.0.0.1. To get those changes in your code, if needed, it's only about the code where you have to re-download the symbol. If it is not about the code part, then you can just update Sandeep Sir's app on your environment, and this app will automatically take references of the new app. But if you requested, let's say, event or a function from Sandeep Sir, which you will need to write the code that you want to write, then yes, you will have to change it here. Does that make sense, Avinav?
Yes.
So if you say, Sandeep Sir, I need a event when you're trying to insert this. Now that's a code change that you're requesting, and that code change came into this. Now that means that you want to write code against that event or by utilizing that event. In that case, you will have to change it here and then re-download the symbol so that it gets the new dependency.
That's what I was looking.
But if the errors that you found were not code related, were failing in a process on your customer environment, and you were able to see that those errors are coming from Sandeep Sir's app, you say, oh, though these guys were testing this scenario, let's say releasing sales order, and your app is giving this error. And he says, okay, no worries, we have fixed it here, just deploy this. You go to customer environment and deploy 0.0.1 and reinstall this, because this will get installed when this gets updated. It'll work as it is. You don't have to change the dependency here, because it automatically understands that I'm looking for the minimum version this. And if a higher version exists, I'll take those references from it. So it depends on what kind of situations you are in. If you are in a environment where you're just changing that, that works as it is. So now what I'll do is I'll go and do an upload. Oh, should I do that? I should do it from VS Code, because I want to debug this. Or maybe I'll do that from here, because sometimes people do this and they say, because we were debugging, we wanted to do this, which is also incorrect. Okay, so let's go to the PDE, and this is my app 1.0.0. It will get installed like this. Let's wait for it for a while and get installed here. So any version that you specify in your app.json, remember this, that is the minimum version that your app is looking on the customer tenant. And that's the only reason why your apps, which were written, let's say 2 years ago or 5 years ago, are still working on your customer environment. Even the Microsoft is changing the version every single month. Now think about it, if you have to exactly match it, then every month, whenever a cumulative update comes, you'll have to go to the source code and change it to 0.1. Next month, 0.2, 0.3. It'll be a nightmare. So that's why these properties are always targeted to the minimum version that's available. Because in SaaS, you don't control when an ISV app gets upgraded, because it happens automatically. So yeah, I just remember about that question and thought that's important, because I have heard it in my team also. Some
Yeah,
cases.
it was very good clarification.
Okay, so yeah, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and people complain about it, that oh yeah, we published it, because I personally hate dev type of extension where it says published as dev. And then the reasons that I get from different people that, oh, I have to publish it because I wanted to debug this. And that's the reason I had to go to Sandbox and click F5 from my VS Code so that I can debug that, which is surely not true. You can literally debug anything without installing it from VS Code if it is your extension, to be fair. So let's see that once this gets deployed. Okay, this seems to be deployed. Let's check that out. Here it is. So I have version 1.0.0 for the PD and one for the ISV app. Now, for the scenario that we are discussing about the debugging properties, more or less, we would like to debug this. Now think of this extension, the PDE extension, as one of the extension that you guys have built in for your customers. And then you set this up to point to that sandbox, and it will pop up the page 22. If you have to debug this, you don't have to click F5. And that's the beauty of VS Code. You just need to go to command prompt or whatever this command palette and search for debug without publishing. So what you are telling with this command to your VS Code, that don't publish the extension where I'm in, but I would like to debug as soon as the client pops up with the current code, because I have set my debugger points here. So as soon as I say debug without publishing, it'll pop up my environment without installing the app. It'll not get updated there, and it will show me the starter page that I've set on my launch.json, and I can just debug it. And you don't even have to be on that extension. You can do it with the blank extension, targeting it to one particular environment. Let's say if you want to debug the sales order posting routine, just create an empty extension, put your debugger points wherever you need it, and then do this debug without publishing, and let you debug everything without publishing a fake extension, if that's how I guess I understand it. Okay, so right now I'm on a debugging mode. If you go back to my VS Code, you'll see the debugging is already started here. So now let's try to go to customer card and search for that action where I added this. The customer, It's always a nightmare to find things here. So let me go back in VS Code and see where I added it. It's called test debugging, I guess. So let's search for it. That's the beauty. Test debugging. There it is. As soon as I click on this, my VS Code should get activated for debug mode, and I'm here. Now it will take me to the source code of this app at this point. So as soon as I go in, I see that, oh, there's nothing written on that function. Great. Then I say test my customer. If you notice, it didn't went inside there. The test my customer, it didn't went into the code because it was tagged as non-debuggable. As I come to test my vendor, it will go inside and let me go through the code that's there, which is this. So what I'm suggesting here, that instead of changing this property on your app.json on your extensions that you're building, for the better word, for your extensions for app source or as an ISV, don't change this to false. If you have methods which you would like to keep secret, define them as non-debuggable. The debugger will skip it and respect your property that you have set, rather than making the whole, object non-debuggable or the whole extension non-debuggable. Choose the right way to do it so that people can utilize it. And I'm pretty sure the include in symbol file is more or less self-sufficient or self-explanatory. Any thoughts, questions?
You can still see the functions that are getting executed, right?
No, you can't go in there. If,
You
the
can't go, but you
function
can see the name.
Oh, because you have written it. Like I have written it here, right? In my PTE, I've actually written those functions. That's what I was seeing. I was seeing these functions because I have written them.
No,
I was not able to go there.
no, but if, say, for example, if I'm calling one function which is non-debuggable, it's calling another function which is also non-debuggable. So can I, while debugging, can I see where it is going from 1 to 2 and then to even say third debuggable sessions? Can I see them?
I'm not sure. Let's do that. Let's do AL go and let's create AL project 3, pointing to 9.0. And
Within that,
nothing on.
can you create second function?
Yeah, let's do that. What I'm trying to do, I guess, just to clarify your question, because both these extensions were in the same scope, and that's why maybe it was visible. So let's do this. If I go here, and if I just copy this configuration as it is, if that makes sense, into my launch.json, and copying everything here. Okay, got this, and let's remove this. I don't need this at this point. Okay. And then app.json, I would have to take a dependency. Do I have to? No, I don't. Maybe I have to. Yes, I'll have to. So let's go into the app.json of my PTE. And this is interesting. How I'll do that. Yes, I'll have to take a dependency on this. Sorry, I was getting a little bit confused. Okay. In my new extension, where I just want to debug, and I'm on a separate environment more or less at this point. And then I do a version 1.0 from here. Okay. And this is, I'm setting up the dependency to PTE, not to the main extension, more or less. And I'm downloading the symbol. It should get downloaded. I should get the child app, not the parent app. In here. Okay, I get that. I come into this app and then I go to the page extension. Where is this page extension? Here it is. Get into this and now put the debuggers here. Now I'm on a completely separate zone. This app doesn't know about the parent app. Okay. This function is debuggable. This function is debuggable, whereas this one is not. So now let's try to debug this and see how it works. Because earlier I was on the same scope or same workspace, so it made sense the way it behaved. but I'm hoping this time it will behave differently. Debug without publishing. Okay. Now this extension AL project 3 is not in my SaaS environment where I'm targeting right now, and it's not going to be published there. It's just let me debug the scenario that I would like to debug by putting my debugger points. So if you refresh this page, let's do that, you'll not see an extension called AL project 3 more or less, which we are using just for the debugging purposes. Okay. Look on this one. Okay, here it is. And let's do a test debugging. Okay. My VS Code should fire if I'm not wrong. It doesn't. Why? It should have been fired. I have my debugger point set. I think so. I did set them. See this? Yes, I did set them. Let me click on it again. It doesn't. Why? Do I have to take a dependency on the parent one also? Let's
Does
do that.
not make difference. Doesn't make sense because we normally go into Microsoft app and just simply put.
Yeah, but then the Microsoft app is not dependent on any other app per se. Right? This app is already dependent on a different app. Maybe let's try that. And does that work or not? Let's go to this. Go back to my app.json. Like all these properties.
Even sort of you can try that the new AL project 3 app. You can just try it and debug the base thing, whether the debugger goes into that or not.
Oh, debugger will go there. That's for sure. Let's do that. Let me see what the problem is here. Package it's all app and a version. It's not found. Okay, let's download the symbol. Not a problem. Okay. Here it is, and I guess where I am page extension. I already have set the debugger points here. Now it should understand what my parent app look like. If that was a problem, debug without publishing, and let's go ahead. Okay. But yeah, it should stop even if there is no dependency on that. I'll have to test the scenario because that doesn't make any sense as Anubhav was saying. Let's see that. Okay. No, doesn't like me there. Okay, so Anubhav, you're
When
saying
what
that.
I've seen is
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you.
No, go
When
ahead.
I'm even debugging the email thing, even though some of the functions are internal, I
Right.
can still see their names in the watch list.
You can see
But
the name of the functions, right, in
functions,
this
yes.
window. Yeah.
Yeah. Source control.
But yeah, it doesn't allow you to go inside that. I guess that's
Yeah.
what it limits to, right?
The only thing is, I can still see the name of the functions that are getting executed. When I'm
But in
debugging,
node code, yeah.
yeah, while debugging, on the left-hand side window, it will just show you whatever is getting executed.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. It does show you what's happening. But yeah, let's just, for the sake of discussion, let's put a debugger point on the base app on what is this action called? Approvals. Okay, is it visible by any chance? No, it's visible in every case, I guess. So let's search for this and let's try to do a debug without publishing. And there's a customer card also, so that's good.
You should have put it on the send for approval.
customer, is there one? As in, it'll check for, is it approval is enabled or not, I guess. Come on. Yeah, it did pick this up. It reaches here. So that is not the problem. That's going in and doing whatever it is expected to do. Now, what is the problem then with our code? Okay. Let's debug. Yeah, it popped up again. No, it is still stuck on the older word of this. It didn't
He doesn't
call
like the
that.
code. He doesn't like the
Yeah,
code.
seems so. It's a fake code. At the end of the day, it's a fake code. Yeah, this is something that I need to test. But yeah, you can surely debug this. And I guess Sandeep said that's what I've seen. You can see it here, the function names and all.
Yes.
But you can't see the code here. It comes empty. It does pop up those windows, but those are
Yes.
actually empty, right?
Yes.
But yeah, this is surely a super interesting question, that what happens in this situation, not this. Sorry, let me go back here. In this situation where in a code unit, there are three functions. One of them is non-debuggable. But when I'm on this function, can I scroll down and see, oh, this is non-debuggable. Let's see what the heck is inside
No, no,
this.
no.
You can't?
It will not show. No. You can't.
Okay.
But
Okay,
Saurabh,
I
one
never
thing,
tried this, but yeah.
one thing is like this test my customer is non-debuggable, right? In test my customer, you create another function, and that function is debuggable. So will cursor goes into that?
Yes.
I mean, the
No,
okay.
it will when the function call happens, then it'll start the debugging from there. That I'm sure about.
Okay, but
If
not to the
test,
previous one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If test my vendor is part of it, then whenever the code reaches to this point, till this point, it'll not show you anything, but it's inside there. But as soon as it reaches to the first line of this, it'll show you that I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
That's the beauty
Got
of
it.
it. Okay. Jignesh, you had something?
Yes, hello everyone, and I think most of the people facing this issue right now, while which I am facing. So, is it possible? So, if you stops recording, so I need to share that client code and client issue.
Okay, I don't mind. Just give me a minute. Anything else? Anyone
Just
would like
pause.
to talk?
Yes.
Yeah, just 10 minutes, and maybe
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
look at it. Anything, guys, for the next week that you have in mind? Just FYI, the BC21 is out. The previews are out, and I'm only be able to host it at the max for next 2 weeks. Then I'll be traveling.
We can look at those artifacts and can see what is there in the new things that they've given us.
Okay. Okay.
No, if there is any other idea, we are open.
Yeah. If there are any other ideas and you can't think of them right now, you can drop me an email or ping me anywhere on the social media where I'm connected, and we can surely talk about something which is interesting. This was, I think this was good. People got something out of it. I'm hoping people will get something out of it later also.
I can't say about people, but I got it.
But if there are any ideas, thoughts, just let me know somewhere, and we'll talk about it next week.
Just one request, Saurabh.
Yes, sir.
Just one request. Never stop these sessions.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that I never reach to a point where I can't get some time on Saturday for sure. Now we'll try to keep doing it, as I said in the beginning of these sessions.
Literally, to be very honest, you're doing a tremendous job, which is helping a lot of people. Or you are really a role model for all of the BC developers here in India. So please इसको बंद मत करिएगा कभी.
Yes,
no,
you're right.
That's a huge statement. That's a huge statement. But yeah,
Yeah,
we all are doing it together. Sandeep sir is here. Avinav is here all the time, and we guys figure it out together. I don't do it alone, to be very fair. I can't think of all these situation and work on it, even if I, even if I can. So it's not just me. And as I said in the beginning of these meeting, when I started it 2 years ago, even if there is one single person, I don't mind to spend an hour every week.
I guess at that time lockdown was imposed, right?
Right. Yeah. And there were so many questions back then,
So
and I was not able to reply things.
this is one of the best thing which happened because of lockdown to all of us.
Uh, n- not exactly, but still, yeah, we understand the feelings. Fine. Thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
very
I'll
much
just
for
stop the
this session.
recording. Jignesh, then we'll share it. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'll just stop the recording now.
Fine.
Thanks, Saurabh.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Saurabh.
man.